So we often have these periods in life where we are called away into isolation. And I just want to normalize this. No one told me that this was a part of the journey, especially as a believer in Jesus Christ, that there will be times in your life where you feel completely alone, where you feel like, where did everyone go? You look around, friendships have fallen off, relationships have ended, and you're like, what's going on and what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. It's natural, it's normal, and it's necessary. It is necessary for our development. It's necessary for your growth. And when I was on this new journey with the Lord, when I was 24, and I was in that 2-year period of isolation, and I felt like I was in a cocoon. Like no one, I felt buried, honestly. It didn't feel like a cocoon. It was like no one's around and it's just me and Lord, why me? And why are you doing this? And I felt hurt. I felt disappointed. I felt lonely. And as I was crying myself to sleep, crying myself after work, crying to myself over dinner, barely not wanting to get up, I now can see that God was shaping me. God was refining me. God was purifying me. God was cleansing me from all unrighteousness. When I couldn't listen to the music that I was just kicking it at the club to the week before, and he's like, no, none of it. Because he had to be so abrupt with me to snatch me out, because I would have continued on. I couldn't say I'm going to live holy and I'm going to not have sex before marriage anymore, and I'm going to stop clubbing, I'm going to stop drinking, but every song is about being turned up in the club and getting some. It's a contradiction. So if I'm new in my faith and my faith isn't built up and my flesh is weak, and our flesh is always weak and wanting to lead us and guide us and lead us astray, if those things are a reality, we can't attach ourselves to the very things that are keeping us bound and sometimes even killing us, right? So I had to make a hard break, a quick break. And that was God rescuing me. And it didn't feel good. And then I felt lonely. Y'all, I was president of my sorority. Like, I was used to kicking it deep. I would be 15, 20 people anywhere I went. So I just want you to get that in your mind. Years upon years, 15, 20 people anywhere I went. And then I was a social coordinator. I mean, just naturally, not, this is me even after graduation. Me naturally, I'm like, let's go to the comedy show. I got guest list, 20 people on the list. Let's go out to the club. I was the social coordinator. That's my natural personality. So to go from this social butterfly who was always surrounded with more people and women than most people even know, for God to bring me into a place of isolation felt like punishment, and it felt like I was dying. Like, it was so extreme. That's why I was crying, like, what is this and why? And in that, God had to teach me that he was enough. God had to show me who he is. He had to train my ear to hear him. He had to train my eyes to see him. He had to purify my heart to actually desire him and not the things or the people. Right? So in that, and it might have just took me longer than most people. That's why it was 2 years, because I'm a little stubborn. Right? And I was resistant to it, and I was a little angry about it. And he had to get me to that place of breaking so that he could build me up, but really take me back to the me he created before the foundation of the world. He was taking me back to that me that he called when I was a teenager, and he had started Bible study when I was in high school. He said, will you step into that? Will you step into that? So the people being removed out of my life, it actually has not ever been the same. Like, God, from that moment, those moments in 2008, God has like called me out from like among the groups of people in ways that I thought like would change. No. So now, all these years later, I value people differently. I value the few. I value the quality. I value those that are there that I can go to and who can accept the fullness of me, the called me, the still, whatever me. Like people that can accept me and know me and love me the same and also grow with me. So he had to show me, like, you're around everybody, you're around all these people, but everyone you're with is not your friend. So the larger the group, there's going to be some Judases in there somewhere, right? There are people that are there for what you can do for them versus who you are. So being surrounded, I was used to it, but that was probably stroking my ego and all these things, but it wasn't good for my life, for my future, for my heart, for all these things, right? So I just want you to know that if you feel like you are isolated, that you are alone, that you're like, where did the people go? That is by design. And your Father desires time with you. He desires time with just you and him. He desires time to whisper sweet nothings in your ear. He desires time to show you things that are to come. He desires time to show you who you are and who he created you to be. He desires time to tell you what's next. He desires time with you to show himself to you. Like, I bet you to know this. And actually, you got this from me. That thing that you like is actually my heart desire. It's not just you. You got it from me, your daddy. So step into intimacy with the Father and know that the time in isolation is short, even though it feels like forever, but it's purposeful. And that's where he does the new thing. Before he reconnects you, before he sends you out, before he uses you, at every new stage and phase, God brings you into a place of isolation. And you can see that in the life of Jesus. Even when he had this public announcement that this is my son who I'm well pleased, when he got baptized by John, then he was led into the wilderness to be tempted. Jesus went away. He went away to be with the Father. He went away from the crowd. He went away to pray. He went away for intimacy. And every time he went away, he came back stronger. And he grew. He grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and with men. So every time you're isolated and you come away with the Lord and God shows you himself and you're taking the limits off of him, you're unrestricting him, he is also unrestricting you. He's taking those limits off of you and you will grow and you're going to come out on the other side like, wow, there's a new me. There's new wisdom. There's new revelation. There's new instruction. And God, it didn't feel good, but I thank you.
Everybody that I talked to, all my friends, they were gone in a blink. And it broke my heart. I said, God, I'm thankful that I have this job, but I can't even celebrate right now because everybody that I'm connected to is gone. And Absolutely. I'm more upset about that than I am happy to still have my position. So I cried a lot. And I was like, God, this isn't cool. Like, I don't even know what to do with this. And eventually he was like, I understand that you are hurt, but I need you to give this to me. Yeah. And so I was upstairs in the dark crying, and he said, I want you to visualize putting this in your hands, like put all the sadness in your hands and lay it at my feet. Yeah. And so when I did that, I was like, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And so I did it, and I laid it down. And even going back to work, and we had just moved to a new huge building, so even the intimate space that we had, it was just, we didn't see nobody. Wide open space. And so it's like, come have lunch with me. All right, Lord, let's have lunch together. And so eventually it got better as time went on, but I knew it was God was pulling people away so I could draw near. Yes. But at the same time, it was very uncomfortable being in a new place with all the people that you thought were going to be there who just got let go and walking through that. So it felt alone in many spaces, but I also realized that God was also trying to draw me closer, and I had to be willing to do that.
That's what the consecration is about.
Absolutely.
That's just what it's about. And a lot of people say, well, I got to do this and I got to do that. Listen, if you're prescribing your own consecration medicine, then it might not be God, not 100%. Because from my personal experience, and in the room, if you got something different, you say, the Lord walked me through it. I didn't even had no clue what it was
Yeah.
gonna be.
Absolutely.
Then all of a sudden, I can't stand the sound of something.
Yes.
I don't want to go somewhere no more.
100%.
And I don't know what's next, but the scripture said the steps of a righteous are ordered of the Lord. If you're in a space where you cannot even hear Him because you're so in love with everything else, and you mend your own heart by tending to other people. I'll go with you. I'll ride with you. I can show up. I can come. But you need to sit down. You're tired. You're weak. You're hungry.
Yeah.
You ain't prayed about nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And the Lord say, you know what? You know what, everybody? Don't call her. Block her. Don't invite her. You know, because she don't have the good sense to sit down on her own.
Absolutely.
It doesn't look like you can say, you know, I'm gonna fast for clarity about this thing. That's one thing. But when you're coming apart to be with the Lord, it's not until you feel like coming out. It is until He
releases you.
What you said, April?
Release.
He gave you the next step.
Yes.
After you did.
I knew what to do.
Hey.
There was no doubt. And that's the thing. When we are truly walking with the Lord, He makes His instructions clear. They're clear. When you, and yes, as you grow with Him, you learn to hear your Father's voice. You learn to obey. You learn to start to pay attention to what is He saying? What is He doing? Yes, when He had me leave everything behind and be in that living room for 2 years, not listening to any secular music, because I love music. I actually wanted to be a DJ, like as a hobby. I love music. I love dance. And when God had me enter into that space where He's like, no, you have to be purified. No, you can't be around the familiar because it's going to draw you back to it instead of me. I wept. I was weeping. I was crying. I felt like I kept asking God, why me? I literally said, why me? Everyone else is still clubbing. Everyone else is having sex before marriage. Everyone else is doing their own thing. Why can't I do what everyone else is doing?
Why can't I be normal?
Look, I still be asking that question. I'm even gonna lie. I still ask it.
Every now and then.
I still ask it because we crave to fit. We crave normalcy. We crave to be accepted. But God says He's accepted us into the beloved, that we're already accepted, and that he already set us apart, and that we're a royal priesthood, but we don't want that. We're like the children of Israel. We say, nah, give us a king. Now give us what them other people have. Give us what them other people have, even though it ain't working for them. What you got working and for us is working, but we don't look like everyone else. It doesn't feel like them, and we don't want to stand out. We want exactly what they have. And the thing is, God starts to show you now in this journey of walking with Him since 2008 in a surrendered place, in an aligned place. God has shown me the things that people were doing when I was at home crying for those 2 years. And I was like, God, how come I can't? Why not me? Why can't I be out and about? Those things were not working for them either. It wasn't working, but it just took a little longer for that to be unfolded. And honestly, a lot of those same people are still in a similar position from where we were in 2008. And things have gotten worse. And now they're in bondage. Now they're entangled with that thing. They're entangled in the sin. They're entangled in the relationship and can't get out and keep going around the mountain, but the man won't marry her. Like, I see it. And I was like, Lord, you spared me. What felt like punishment was actually protection. What felt like, I was being ostracized and left out. God was like, I am preserving you for the best thing. The best thing. Not the settle, not the mediocre, not the less than what God had in mind for me before the foundation of this world. So it's a whole different thing, again, when you get in alignment and you're like, wait, the restrictions that got put on me in that season were actually for my good. He put boundaries in place borders and boundaries so that I stopped stepping outside of where his protection was, where his grace was, where his will was, where his mercy can cover me. And so when we come into that place, we're like, Lord, you have your way. Even though this doesn't feel good, you will see that, wow, this was for my good. And thank you for being God, because if it was up to me, I would have kept doing me. And what would have been the consequence for those actions? Because the Bible says that the wages of sin are death, right? There's a consequence. It may not be a death in the physical sense, but there's something you are giving up and that you're losing, that you are forfeiting every time you are stepping outside of the will of God. Every time you are stepping outside of what he said, stay within these boundaries. When you're giving your body away outside of the covenant of marriage, and you're just giving your body away, there's something you're losing. And oftentimes we're losing a piece of ourselves that we get numb to the idea that, man, why am I feeling empty? Because you're connecting yourself in a way that God never designed for you to. Sex was created by God. Sex is intended to be good. And sex within marriage is the boundary, the border that God said, do it within. It's only when we step outside of his intention, of his will, that we get the consequences of the sexually transmitted disease. So we get the consequences of babies outside of marriage, and we get the consequences of, now I got to struggle financially, or now I got the consequence of raising this child by myself. Now I got the consequence of my identity feeling bruised because they keep leaving me, but they want to sleep with me. We endure the consequence when we step outside of his will, which is his boundaries that are actually for our good.